Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Aarti, and in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how I went from this to this in the span of just 2 years. So without any further delays, let's get started with the video. Have you ever asked an artist or a musician or any creative person how they got better at a certain skill and their response was,
I practiced every day until I got better.
And then you followed that advice and practiced every single day, and the more that you started to practice,
the worse that your art started to get?
Trust me, most of us has been there. There's a saying that goes, practice doesn't make perfect, but perfect practice makes perfect. So tip number 1 is before you start practicing anything, make sure that you understand the basics of the style, the composition, the color theory, and all the technical things that go into the drawing or painting. I can't reiterate enough on how important this is, because if you don't understand the basics of what you're doing and you start practicing it the wrong way, you're gonna notice that your art is gonna go downhill and it's only going to get worse from where it is now. Why? It's because you're creating new pathways in your brain to learn a certain skill, but the way you're doing that skill is wrong. And so your brain is gonna get used to the techniques that you're doing, which aren't correct. And slowly you're gonna keep on doing those techniques over and over again. And since you're using the wrong techniques or those techniques are not correct, you're going to notice a decline in your art skill over time. And this is the number one mistake that I've seen artists, especially younger artists, make when they first start their art journey. With that being said, they're super easy to fix. All you need to do is really try hard to understand the basics of the style that you're learning. So for example, if you were doing a cartoon style, you would go onto YouTube and figure out the color theory, the color composition, complementary colors, so what colors would work well together and what colors wouldn't work well together. Once you understand that, it's time to start the paperwork. So now you're gonna start figuring out how to layer those colors, how to blend those colors, and what are the correct techniques to use to make those colors look less streaky and more vibrant. This is an example of how you should start your art journey, or if you've already started your art journey, this is an example of how you should start from now on to make your art better. And once you've started doing this, you will notice a huge improvement in your art over a small period of time. This comes to tip number 2, which kind of correlates with tip number 1, is you have to learn how things actually work. It's very good to experiment in your art journey, and I do it all the time, but you have to understand how things work before actually doing something. So like I said before, learn the proportions, learn the angles. Trust me, it will make a huge difference in your art. Towards the end of this video, I'm going to be giving you tips that are not really technical, but it's just what I've learned. For example, how to make a drawing that you've already finished look better without doing much. So make sure you stick around all the way until the end of the video. The third tip that I have for you is don't focus on the outcome more than the process. The process is so much more important than the outcome, and I've noticed that if you're not enjoying the process, the art becomes 10 times worse than what it would have been if you were enjoying the process. And the reason is, when you're enjoying the process, our brain tends to be more focused on what it's doing. So that's why it's very important to enjoy the process. And also, when you're focusing on the process more than you're focusing on the results, you start to learn more from the process, and your future paintings will come out better as well because you've learned from your previous paintings. And that's one of the most important things. When you're learning from those paintings, that's what makes your future paintings so much better. Have you ever heard an artist tell you, you need to practice every single day for 30 minutes a day to get better? Well, I will tell you,
That is not correct.
in fact, that is something that honestly made me get so stressed about art. And honestly, that's the tip that kept me from starting my art journey for so long, because I was not ready, nor was I motivated enough to draw and paint every single day for 30 minutes a day. And that's what I'm saying. If you're learning from what you're doing, and if you're focusing on the process and understanding what you're doing, you don't need to practice every single day for a set amount of time to get better. The next tip is action comes before motivation. So don't wait for that inspiration to come. You need to get up and go find it. Once you start doing it, it'll be so much easier to finish it. That motivation to paint or to draw will come from you doing the action first. And only once you do the action will you get the motivation to draw or paint or whatever. Okay, so now all those
Technical kind of tips are all out of the way.
here are some tips that are a little bit easier to follow, and these small tips can change the way you do your art forever. So the first tip is make sure you're drawing or painting in a space that makes you feel inspired. For example, I have this room. It's surrounded by trees, animals come here, birds come here, and it's so fun to paint and draw here or just sit here and relax. I know everyone might not have a room like this, but make sure your room is clean, it's organized, make sure that the lighting is good. Basically, make sure you're comfortable and make sure it's not cluttered, because if it's too cluttered, your mind can lose that motivation to paint further. Make sure your space is clean and organized, and that way you'll be able to stay motivated the whole time. Okay, next is for a specific type of style. So if you're doing like a more cartoon style, something that I've noticed is that if the artwork looks really dull or it doesn't look how you wanted it to, or it looks really streaky, I like to add nice, big, bold, juicy highlights to it, and that honestly always fixes it. Again, this is for more cartoon kind of styles, and I found that it really helped my drawings come to life. Try that if your art's not looking as good as you wanted it to, and trust me, it's made a huge difference. And lastly, I've gotten this question so many times. How do you find your art style? Honestly, it's not as hard as people make it sound. The first thing you need to do is think about all the types of art that you've seen in your life and which ones really made you say, wow. And think about the ones that you really wanted to create from that. And that's one of the biggest ways that you can find your style, because oftentimes the art pieces that we like to see the most are the ones that we subconsciously want to create. And that's obviously not gonna always be the case, but I would definitely suggest to try to experiment in the art style that you like to see the most, and then after that you can kind of figure out what works for you, what doesn't work for you. Next is find an art style that isn't too hard for you, or find a type of art in the art style that isn't too hard for you, especially if you're just starting, because if you start with something that's really hard right off the bat, you're going to lose that motivation and you're going to feel really defeated. It's really important to make sure that you start off with something that you can at least do a little bit so that you don't lose the motivation after that. And then lastly, the cliche tip that we've all been waiting for is have fun when you're drawing. I say this is cliche, but I genuinely mean it. You need to have fun when you're doing your art. Oh yeah, and I forgot. There's actually one more tip. I know I said that was the last one, but this is the last one, and probably one of the most important ones is don't compare your art with other artists, because other artists have so much more experience, so much more knowledge, and so much more time because they've been doing it for so long. So never ever compare yourself to other artists. Anyways, I hope this helped you guys a little bit on your art journey. These are the tips that definitely helped me so much. So thank you guys so much for watching. Comment this emoji if you watched all the way to the end, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!